But Rwanda is a very safe place to go. It's a really amazing country. I was very impressed. What are the two things you know about Rwanda?
The Civil War.
Civil War.
The Tutsi and the Hutus.
Anything else? Tutsi and Hutus, yeah. Nobody knows about gorillas. Me either. I don't know anything about the gorillas, but that's a big attraction there. I'll talk about it. Sorry, I can't turn Lady Smith off right now. I don't know how to do it. It's nice. I love it anyway. So, it's another landlocked country in East Africa, and it's very green and mountainous, which should mean it rains a lot. If it does, I wasn't in it. The weather I had was very nice. And then it's got these national parks which have gorillas and monkeys, and it's a big tourist attraction. I had heard that you can pay $1,500 a day in the hotel where you can see the gorillas. It doesn't interest me, so I wasn't interested in that one. And this is not a great map of Africa, but you can see it's not even pointing to Rwanda, but that's about where it is in the lower quadrant, right below the equator. And it's surrounded by Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, the Congo, and that's where it is. So these are the gorillas that I didn't see, and it's a big source of revenue for the country. So people pay a lot of money to go to see these guys. The country is divided into 5 provinces, which the only place I was in was Kigali, the capital. So I don't know much about the country, so I'm misrepresenting myself to say this is a slideshow in Rwanda. It's really a slideshow in Kigali, but talking about the whole atmosphere of the country, which is really quite interesting. It's a small country. It's one of the smallest countries on the African mainland, but it's large in population with 12 million people, so it's very densely populated. It doesn't feel that way, but it is. And it's in the African Great Lakes region, so there's a lot of lakes, a lot of water there. It's elevated, and it's mountainous, and it's got a lot of trees. So it's a pretty country. And I don't know if it's easy to get around. I don't know. The capital is easy to get around. The roads are very good. There's plenty of cars. Not traffic jams, but plenty of cars. And that's what the country looks like. Very, very pretty. At this point, the economy is based mostly on subsistence agriculture, but that's changing rapidly. Coffee and tea are the major exports, and tourism is a fast-growing sector of the economy. In the country's leading foreign exchange earner, the climate is good. It's temperate, subtropical, and 2 rainy seasons and 2 dry seasons. So apparently I got the dry season. But there's one of the lakes, plenty of lakes there. So this is Paul Kagame, and this is the very interesting and controversial and progressive leader of Rwanda. And he was a hero during the Rwandan genocide. And out of that, he emerged as president. Constitutionally, he had 2 7-year terms. But he changed the Constitution, or he and the legislature changed the Constitution so that he can now succeed himself almost indefinitely, theoretically up to 2034. So there's a lot of controversy about him, but he says, we want to make the kind of progress that will make Rwanda unrecognizable to those who define us by our tragic history, the genocide. The future we are building is the future Rwandans deserve. I was very impressed with what is going on there as far as people getting education, getting health care, getting housing. and the safety of the place. I was very impressed. And as a tourist, I was very impressed because they're very nice places to go, as you'll see here. Yeah, I'll talk about that. Corruption is very low there, but there is suppression of opposition and intimidation and restrictions on freedom of speech. So that's the controversial part about Paul Kagame. The majority of the parliament are women, women. Women. So, lest you get confused, Kagame is the president and Kigali is the capital. So, a little confusing. My guide, I had a guide, was very praising of Kagame. And he said that the people were very happy there and things were going very well for the economy and for him, and the reason he got the third term was because the people demanded that he stay in office. So very hard to really know what's going on, but except you can visibly see the progress that's been made there, especially as compared with other African countries. It's astonishing, I think. So still 70% of the population is engaged in agriculture, but there's been rapid industrialization and an economic boon improving the living standard of many Rwandans, if not most. He wants to make Rwanda the Singapore of Africa, which would be quite a challenge. As you know, what our president has described Africa as a bunch of shitholes, but and I know what he means in many places, that's sort of true. But at least the capital of Rwanda is definitely not one of them. This is a video, and if I can get the Black Mambaza to stop singing, you'll be able to hear it more. Oh, I like this song too. Let me see. Let me try this. Okay, let's just see if we can hear him over this. Hear this.
This man has won praise for transforming Rwanda into one of the world's fastest growing economies. President Paul Kagame has curbed street-level corruption, attracted foreign investment, and reduced the country's poverty levels. So why are his people so frightened of him?
Or are they frightened of him?
Kagame came to power in 1994 when his forces swept aside the government which had orchestrated the genocide of more than 500,000 people. The majority were Tutsis, but many moderate Hutus were also killed.
Ce que je me rappelle de cette période, pour beaucoup de Rwandais, une période douloureuse. Toujours. Moi, personnellement, j'ai perdu plus d'une trentaine d'innocents et j'en passe.
President Kagame, an ethnic Tutsi and leader of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, has kept the peace at hand, even as he's pursued wars against neighbouring Congo.
President Kagame's kept things simple and focused. I think the biggest success that Kagame has achieved since the mid-90s is the reduction in mass poverty, which has been quite exceptional by African standards.
Under Kagame's leadership, this small, landlocked country has notched up growth rates of 8% a year since the $1 million convention centre in the capital, Kigali, epitomises Kagame's economic vision for Rwanda. He wants to transform the country into the Singapore of Africa. And some economists now talk of the Rwandan miracle, like former Prime Minister Faustin Twagiramungu, who now lives in Belgium, claim Kagame's rule is based on tyranny.
Je n'ai pas répété l'expression. Vous devez glorifier le régime ou alors l'exécuter. Autrement dit, vous ne vous associez pas à Kagame, vous êtes fini.
In 2003, Twagiramungu challenged Kagame for the presidency. He was the only opposition.
Moi, dans ma région natale, j'ai eu 0,06. Et au total, j'ai eu 3 pouces.
In
So
the
he's
official
challenging
result,
that
Kagame
vote.
took 95% of the vote. Twagaramungu is not alone in claiming that Kagame's presidential victories have been rigged.
Kagame va avoir 97 ou 98, une diminution extraordinaire. Pour moi, vivre si loin de chez moi, ça m'a changé tant sur le plan politique que sur le plan émotionnel. Moi, je pense toujours à mon pays, surtout à mon âge. Je dois vivre dans mon pays en liberté.
There are opposition parties, but in reality, Rwanda is a one-party state, and many opposed to the government regularly complain of harassment, imprisonment, and even murder. Kagame looks set to rule for constitutional change, which could, in theory, allow him to remain as president until 2034. And while the 59-year-old leader presides over a seemingly peaceful country, the West seems content.
Sometimes autocracy works to deliver rapid reductions in mass poverty. Sometimes democracy is very different. One thing we've learned for sure is that democracy is not the universal fix.
Foreign journalists can visit easily enough, but local media dare not criticize the regime.
Les journalistes doivent écrire ce qui plaît au peuple. Ce que nous voulons, c'est d'abord la démocratie. Dans notre pays, Kagame n'a pas acheté le Rwanda. Le Rwanda nous appartient.
Rwanda may be calm and orderly, but if this is based on fear, then this is a recipe neither for happiness, prosperity, or durable peace.
So that's the criticism of Paul Kagame, that there's not freedom of expression or the press, and that he's a tyrant. But I think it's true that democracy is not a universal fix and will not work to get the progress that this country and Singapore could make in a more autocratic ruling country. So it's a very interesting debate. My guide was 100% behind Kagame, and it's the foreign press that seems to be critical of him. And of course there are some exiles, like the former secretary that just spoke. But this is some of the comments about this videotape. This guy comes to Rwanda, this is Kagame he's talking about, stops the mass murderer, causes huge growth in the economy, keeps the peace, reduces poverty, and for some reason this video is trying to make him look like a bad guy. Democracy is not the universal fix. Very interesting. You know, it's the same sort of debate that goes on in China, except this is more of a debate. Then somebody else says, the West refused to help Rwanda during the war, the civil war. In fact, it encouraged it. But now it is shameless in its bid to tell Rwanda what is good for it. And then another one, Paul Kagame is a textbook case of a benevolent dictator. I opine this is what Africa needs presently. To have someone who knows how to fix the problems, develop our economy, set up the institutions, and gradually democracy being implemented, which would take a stronger foothold after other things have been in place. Very interesting debate in this final one. I am fully a Rwandan, but not really experienced that climate of fear you are talking about, just full of joy, peace, and happiness. So you can see he's a very controversial figure, which makes it very interesting, because here's a country that was devastated by a civil war, and now is prosperous and clean, and people are doing well. This is the Guardian article. I don't want to go into this forever, but these two women had challenged Kagame in one of the elections, and they may get up to a 22-year sentence for subversive activities. So that is the kind of thing that does go on there. And you can also see how smartly dressed they are. You see all kinds of outfits in Rwanda. That wasn't important. So the population is young, which is true of Africa, and predominantly rural, which is true of most of Africa, with a high density, among the highest in Africa. I stayed at this hotel that was featured in the movie Hotel Rwanda. How many of you saw that movie? It's not called Hotel Rwanda, it's called Les Mille Collines, which is the Thousand Mountains, hills. And my guide said the story about the hero, Paul, whatever his name was, who allegedly was the owner of the hotel. He was the owner of the hotel. That he saved the lives of all these people because he found rooms for them in the hotel so they weren't slaughtered. My guide said that wasn't exactly true, that he sold them the rooms for a huge amount of money, and that if they didn't have the money, they were slaughtered. So I don't know which is true, but I can say this, the hotel is beautiful. Mille Collines. Rwanda was occupied by Belgium. I think in 1962 they got their independence from Belgium. Previously they were occupied by Germany and France, and so even the Dutch, I think, were in there at one time. So many languages are spoken, but French is the one Western language that's spoken fairly often, and as you can tell from the name of this hotel. So this is what the patio looks like. The food was very nice. There's a lunch buffet, I think. Get very excellent service there. Very nice, fresh food. This is my guide. I can't remember his name for some reason, but he was very nice. A young man who had gone to college. Can't remember anything more about him, but a very nice young man. I enjoyed being with him. And interestingly, he ate the meals with me when we were going around, and I didn't pay for that. His tourist agency paid for his meals when we ate together. This is, there are a lot of paintings around the hotel, a lot of paintings everywhere, and these are pictures of things going on there.
Excuse me, was the university in Rwanda?
Millie, I can't hear what you're saying, I'm sorry.
The university this man went to, was that in Rwanda?
Yeah, oh yes, Rwanda has universities, yes. This is the first meal I had at night from the balcony of the restaurant, and you can see the lights glimmering. A beautiful restaurant, quite expensive, I have to say, this particular restaurant. Parts of the restaurant. This is the bowl of soup I had, cost about $20. I didn't eat there anymore, up there in the high restaurant, but the view was spectacular. This is the lobby. This is the breakfast buffet. There's some more pictures from the hotel that are coming later, but just to point out that it is a beautiful hotel, and I didn't arrange it. I got from the internet a travel agency that arranged for me to have this guide and to stay in this hotel. I think I requested the hotel because it was written up in the New York Times. Yeah, we could do the questions afterwards maybe. Yeah, because Ken's taping it. So this is the Chamber of Deputies building, their sort of Senate. The accommodations for people that don't have a lot of money are still pretty poor, but there's very good transportation between countries and between cities. So this is the bus station. I've been in African bus stations. They're pretty chaotic. This one is pretty chaotic. But there's a plan to make a regular bus station out of it, which will make it a lot more orderly. There's a plan to improve everything, and that's really impressive. This will not be this way probably 5 years from now. Women still carry things on their head, very popular occupation. Their language is, I can't pronounce it, Kinyarwanda, with English and French serving as an additional language. This is what the women wear, the peasant women, I guess. This is how they carry their babies on their back. And it was not that hot. And an umbrella was needed. To my great surprise, there was this very beautiful middle and upper class neighborhood that people, I guess, can aspire to. And it's expanding, so I'm assuming that there's a lot of upward mobility. Very nice houses, very nice coiffed lawns, very clean and paved streets. Nice view. All that land, by the way, is being reserved for housing. There's the street. I'm not sure what the capitalist system is there, who makes money and who doesn't. How many of these people who live up here are foreigners, are white? I don't know that. So this is a plan for the future city of the neighborhood, Vision City Phase 1. And that's what's so impressive about this, at least the capital, is that there's always plans to improve whatever's there. So this is a plan to make more of these houses. And also a plan to improve the lower class housing. There's more of it.
Plans really carried out.
The plans are carried out according to my guide. That's why Rwanda, or Kigali anyway, is the way it is today, because it started out after the Civil War as nothing. Houses were burned down, the place was nothing to begin with, very poor. But after the Civil War and Kagame took charge of the place, all these things started happening. It's amazing to me the importance of the quality of governance makes such a difference in countries. In the 4 countries I went to on this trip, such a big difference between Uganda, which has a very corrupt government, South Africa, which had Mandela, then had Jacob Zulu, who was very corrupt, and now has Cyril Ramaphosa, which we don't know how that's going to work out. Such a difference in people's attitude toward each other and their attitude toward education, their access to medical care, what their roads look like, all because maybe of one person, but certainly the quality of the government. And the role of women in Rwanda is quite different than the role of women in other countries in Africa.
Do they all talk English? I see.
No, I don't think they all talk English. French. I've got to move on, Millie. I'm sorry, because I've got a long presentation and the camera can't hear the questions from the audience. So one of the reasons it's so clean there is because all these women are hired to sweep the streets and collect the trash. This is one of them, and you'll see more houses. Some of these are schools, and I might say they're private schools, my guide told me. There's a typical well-dressed lady. Oh, I showed this already. No. That's another governmental institution. That's the legislature, City Hall. There's the Genocide Museum, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then there's the Campaign Against Genocide Museum, which shows how the war-like people were driven out and how the genocide ended. And mostly, it was thanks to Paul Kagame, who was head of the opposing forces, who in 3 months, after almost 1 million people were killed, they managed to drive out these very well-armed forces. And he was quite a hero, at least he's presented that way in this museum. It was amazing because there were only 6,000 of them and actually almost over 1 million of the other forces that were coming from neighboring countries and from places like Belgium and France, I'm sorry to say. these are some of the pictures in there. Had a guide in there that talked about how this battle was won finally, and it's a blessing that it didn't go on for more than 3 months, because in 3 months all these people were slaughtered just in 3 months. Here's some of the art around the state buildings. A nice hotel. Not yours. Some very nice hotels, apartment buildings, business offices. That view is some of the lower class housing that's improving too. And here's some of the women. There's a lot of motorbikes there. Typical African dress, actually, but typical Rwandan dress. You can see where the lower classes live that the density is really very bad there. And it's not exactly a slum, but it's not very comfortable housing either. And I think there's running water there, I'm not sure. And yet it's very safe to walk around there. There are a lot of stores, and people have the hope of living in better quarters as the city progresses. Here's some more women. Woman on her cell phone. Plenty of that. Woman with fruit on her head. Not Carmen Miranda. Sorry that Ladysmith is such a competition here. Just aside, homosexuality is considered a taboo, but there's no significant discussion of it. Same-sex sexual activity is illegal in Rwanda, and there have been some support for the rights of lesbians and gays, LGBT people, but no legislation supporting them. Same-sex marriages are not recognized, or civil unions or similar unions. And that's true of most African countries, if not more so. Some African countries will kill people who they think are gay. That's quite a load. Big conference and exhibition center. They have a lot of conventions there. There's another view of the lower class housing. And these are some of the languages. They got their independence from Belgium in 1962, so they have their own language. Then many people speak English, French, and Swahili, which are all official languages. And then there's the national language. Swahili is the lingua franca of East Africa, though it is not particularly spoken in Rwanda, but it's now a subject in secondary schools. Technical school, soccer stadium, driving school. I don't understand this picture exactly, but it's pretty, I like it. So most of the population is Catholic, a little less than half actually. And Protestants are about 38%. So it's primarily a Christian country. There's a small percentage, 2% are Muslims, and about 12% are Seventh-day Adventists. It's interesting how some of the evangelical groups have populated Africa and Asia too, for that matter. There's a church in the background. There's a mosque. So that's a big mosque right in Kigali. Which looks very pretty. There's a restaurant. Motorcycles are very big. Another street sweeper. These women are subsidized by the government and to keep the place clean. I don't know how they feel about it, but it is a job. This is there's a rather large shopping area in the lower class housing area. And my guide said that that really picks up at night. People come with their families and shop at night. The stores are open. And he says it's very safe, that foreigners could come, anybody could come, and not worry about their safety there. These are dancers that I didn't see them, but that is one of the 3 kinds of dances they have in Rwanda. This too, I didn't see this. I really didn't see much of the rural area, but if that's what it looks like, if this is what it looks like, then it's still pretty primitive. So the Genocide Museum I had read about, after the genocide, Rwanda did this reconciliation thing. Many of the people who committed the genocide were imprisoned. Many were. But they also had a reconciliation panel where Tutsis and Hutus would talk to each other and express some level of forgiveness. Now in Rwanda, people cannot be identified by their ethnic group. Everybody is a Rwandan. That's it. Whether you're Chinese or you're Hutu or Tutsi or whatever, that designation is no longer on your documents. It's no longer spoken of. It's not a thing in Rwanda. Everybody is Rwandan, and those designations are gone. And that's thanks to Paul Kagame, who feels very strongly that civil war, by the way, that genocide, has a long, long, complicated history, partly based on racism. The Hutus, if I got this straight, were a little lighter skinned and had somewhat more European features. And the Belgians, when they occupied Rwanda, measured all this. Measured the forehead, measured the nostrils, measured the skin color. And they separated the people into Hutus and Tutsis based on that. And the lighter skinned people got the best government jobs. So meanwhile, the Tutsis were building up resentment about all this, and that sort of precipitated all this bloodshed. It's a long story how this civil war got started, because when you know something about it, you wonder how anything so brutal could ever happen in any country. I mean, brutal. Machetes is what killed most people. Women were raped by the thousands. It was a brutal civil war. And you have to wonder, how could this happen? But it's a long history of it. It's not terribly surprising once you know about it. This Genocide Museum is very well known. It was started by a white man, I think a Belgian, who went to the Holocaust Museum in Israel and decided he would dedicate his life to memorializing Holocausts. And this is a Holocaust, what happened in Rwanda. And so he built this museum. No pictures allowed inside, but it is a very, very moving tribute to what happened in this country. None of it is aimed toward hatred. It's all aimed toward understanding and being back, reconciliation. So actually the Civil War started in 1990. The actual bloodshed occurred during this 100-day period from the 7th of April to the middle of July 1994. Some people estimate 1 million people were killed, somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people. And remains are still being found there. The target was the Tutsis, but also moderate Hutus were killed as well. Obviously, the economy suffered, which wasn't very good in the first place, with this genocide. And, like I said, the general cultural linguistic group are called the Banya Rwanda, and then there are 3 groups within this group. The Hutu, Tutsi, and the Twa are small pygmies. in the countryside. So we don't really know where the Hutus and Tutsis came from, but some people say it's attributable to the Belgians artificially separating these people according to skin color and European features. So this is what was the Hotel Rwanda in that movie, and Paul Rusesabagina was the manager. And in that movie, he housed over 1,000 Tutsi refugees whose lives were saved. My guide said that's not what happened, but he did house them, but they had to pay. How many of you saw that movie? We should really show it here. It's a very interesting movie, even though it's not historically accurate. And there's George Bush giving the original owner of the award. There are slides of the slaughter. It's so bloody, you just see bodies lying all over the streets, all over everywhere. Slaughtered with machetes, and it is a really horrible sight. This is part of the museum. Yeah, the militias came. They have provided burial grounds around the museum, and the remains of over 250,000 people are buried around this museum. And as they uncover more and more bodies, they're buried there. The remains are buried there. It's really awesome to be in this situation. There they are. A list of people whose remains are there, and some pictures from the actual massacre. These are more details about the genocide, maybe more details than you want to know. Many fled to the Congo and other places around Rwanda. Long story about this genocide. It's a very famous genocide. It's one of the most brutal genocides in the world. The Tutsis were considered the cockroaches. And on the radio, the Hutus got a hold of the radio stations and told people to wipe out the cockroaches. You know, you could imagine that a country so devastated by a genocide like that would be in shambles. And instead of that, Paul Kagame, who was the hero of the end of this genocide, took over the country and made it what it is today. Not just economically, but psychologically, that this hatred has ceased to exist, and these people are living together with some degree of love and harmony. My guide said 30 members of his family were totally wiped out. So, his critics, oh, well, he doesn't tolerate dissent, we know that, okay. They did try 2 million people for their role in the genocide, but I don't think they were severely punished. So it's illegal to talk about ethnicity in Rwanda to prevent more bloodshed, but some say it prevents reconciliation and just putting a lid on tensions, I don't know. This is another restaurant I had read about, and I asked my guide to take me there for dinner one night, called Heaven. And it's a very nice, friendly restaurant, has a nice, friendly hotel. Oops, that's not it. This is sorry, not in order here, but I just want to read you this. Between 2005 and 2013, life expectancy has increased from 55 years to 64. Mortality of children under 5 has decreased from 106 to 52 per 1,000 live births. And the incidence of tuberculosis has dropped from 101 to 69 per 100,000 people. These are remarkable statistics for anywhere. Our statistics are going backwards. You know, we have higher infant mortality and shorter longevity than we've had before. And this, for Africa, these statistics are amazing. So, this country's progress in healthcare has been cited by the international media and charities. The Atlantic devoted an article to Rwanda's historic health recovery. Partners in Health described the health gains among the most dramatic the world has seen in 50 years, not just Africa. My guide said he pays $5 a year for health care. Of course, there's private health care too, where you pay differently, but education has improved. Here is children using their laptops. I don't know what the mandatory age is of how long children have to go to school, but certainly the schools are pretty good. Private schools are better. And education is a big priority for this government. I didn't read much about the arts, but I found a lot of interesting art around. This is a gallery that my guide took me to. It's very sort of not mom and pop, but like an artist cooperative. This is actually the Hotel Heaven, so. This is one made of whiskey bottles and one made of bottle caps, paintings, whatever they are, a frieze. And here's very interesting fronts of buildings. This is the Heaven Hotel, I think. We also went to an Indian restaurant. There are sizable Indian population in Kigali. And the food was very good. I'll show it to you in a minute. This Ubu Muntu is something that is very important there, in that it talks about the greatness of heart, that is forgiveness and compassion, all the values that were certainly not present during the genocide. This is the Heaven restaurant. Another hotel, maybe my hotel, I think. Yeah, this is making an omelet for breakfast at my hotel. This is the Indian restaurant. And you can see it's not just for white people here at all. Indian waitresses. This is my hotel again. And breakfast. The Indian restaurant. Sorry, these are a little mixed up.
Oh my God.
This is somebody's head carrying all this stuff. Africans have very strong heads. Sports include soccer, volleyball, basketball, etc. Cricket is growing in popularity. And cycling, not just motorcycling, is popular. This is an interesting women's co-op. This is a woman, I think she's dressed in what they make there, I'm not sure, but she looked very elegant. This is some of the things they have there. Apparently the materials come from the Congo, not from Rwanda. But they're sewing them into things. She sort of runs the place. Pretty little children's clothes, and I restrained myself, only bought small little beautiful purses. The library across the street. And some dwellings that I saw that hopefully will improve, but more typical of what you see in rural Africa. And this is downtown. Just a little restaurant, the mosque, the Marriott. Here's a very interesting sculpture of the gorillas. This is amazing convention center here that lights up at night. And more cleaning ladies. More art. You don't see many streets like this in Africa. This is a very well paved and extremely clean street. The CEO of this bank is a woman too, and then these primate safaris are big business there. They have a golf course, which is pretty unusual. A children's village. The hotel again. So that's traffic in downtown Rwanda. I can't get this to stop. Rwanda has its own airlines, Rwanda Air, and they have lots of routes and nice planes. Very nice steward who welcomes you. And that's the end. So come back next time and see the gorillas.